Hey everybody, Harv here. Let's continue our lecture on chapter 19, and we're going to kind of enter the second part and talk about the Soviets. So when we last left off, we were talking about the Great Depression. We talked about Britain, France, what went down with the Great Depression, how Britain had a hard time recovering, how France had a hard time recovering, the division of France. Um, but it's important for us to focus now on Eastern Europe. We know how the West is suffering from the Great Depression. We have a new player in Eastern Europe, and that is the Soviet Union. Um, so you should be familiar with, ladies and gentlemen, that this transition. We are now into the if Russia's gone. We cannot our Russian Empire. Russia is no longer exists. This is very similar to England, right? When we began this class, we had England. We talked about England with Elizabeth, the Stuarts, the Tudors. Um, and then we saw a shift later on in the early 1700s with the Active Union with Scotland and later on with Ireland, how England turned into Great Britain. Important for us to understand that. We now have the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union is referring to the former country of Russia. It's not Russia anymore, okay? It is the Soviet Union. And really important for you all to go back and look at your notes and, understand our czars, right? All the way from Peter, right? Catherine, Alexander, Nicholas, Alexander, Nicholas. Important for to be able to connect this history, because now we're going to move on. We got no more czars. Nicholas is gone. That family is gone. We're going to be talking about dictators now. We're going to start with Lenin. We'll get into Stalin later on. Chapter 21. We're going to end with Khrushchev, Brezhnev, Gorbachev, some of those leaders. Okay. Also important for you all to remember the Russian Revolution, right? Two phases. February, March, October, November, those two different time periods, and when the communists take power, and then that Russian Civil War afterwards from 1918 to 1920. Okay, so we are gonna see, ladies and gentlemen, the Bolsheviks take over. And remember, meaning majority, that army of professional revolutionaries that Lenin set up. And we are going to see that this communist government become just really define authoritarianism throughout the 20th century, and we are going to see this Communist Party hold power from about 1917 to about 1991. Now, the end of the Soviet Union, which I'll get into in chapter 21, starts in about the late 1980s, early 1990s. 1989 is when it kind of starts, and ironically, the birth of Harv. Not a big deal, okay? But as that grows stronger, at the age of 2, communism officially falls. So, not a big deal. Anyways, all jokes aside, the Communist Party is going to hold power for a significant portion of the 20th century, okay? And unlike the Fascist or the Nazi Party, which we're going to talk about later on in this chapter, they gained power through revolution. Really important, and this is a big difference. If you were to ever get an SAQ question on the AP exam that were to say, identify and explain a difference from the Bolsheviks, from some of our other fascist dictators gaining power, the Nazis and Mussolini did not use revolution. They actually did it through diplomacy. They actually did it through legal ways. Not the communists. They did it through revolution. Really important to understand that party membership was not big. A lot of people in the Soviet Union, Russia, all right, our former Russia, were not communists. So a lot of people, 99% of the population, did not identify as, ideologically communist. So they didn't have a lot of people ideologically on their side. Remember, how did Lenin gain power? Well, he's going to give power to the workers, he's going to give land to the peasants, and he's going to get them out of the war. That was part of his April thesis. But a lot of people did not necessarily. They are going to be supporting those things that he wants. That he's saying, "Hey, I'm going to help you out, peasants. I'm going to take us out of the war." They support that, but they don't necessarily ideologically identify as a communist. Okay, and so the Communist Party was very, very uncertain about holding their power because a lot of people didn't necessarily ideologically agree with them. Okay, we know this about the Soviet Union. They're very underdeveloped. Okay. not industrialized, okay, barely industrialized, and we're going to see that change though. Stalin, his nickname is the Man of Steel. He is going to, with his 5-year plans, just start churning out industry, but at a grievous cost to Russian lives. But when the Bolsheviks and the communists take over initially, they are very, very behind, and that's been a theme. We've known that since studying our former Russia, the Soviet Union. We've known that about them. Okay. They are not going to gain power through nationalism or racism like the Nazis and Benito Mussolini's fascists. They're going to really gain power through the appeal of Marxism, right? That more of the equality, the classless system that's going to be very appealing, especially to the mass serfs and workers. But they they gain power through getting out of the war. That's what was making them appealing. All right. So, but they didn't gain power through extreme nationalism, which we'll see with the Nazis and the fascists, and through the racism of the Nazi regime. Okay. And they viewed their revolution as internationally significant, which it was. This was a very significant, ladies and gentlemen, event. We have a communist power. They're here, and they have taken over one of the most powerful, largest country, the largest country in the world. So this was very significant. And we're going to see communism spread throughout the world eventually. And this is one of the big effects of this, and we're going to see this really manifest itself in World War II, is Western Europe is going to be terrified of communism. You're going to see Red Scares all over the place. Winston Churchill is going to be considered a bulldog against communism and in the United States, and this is going to be really important. And we saw this in the Russian Civil War. Is that the Western democracies are actually going to try to prevent the Bolsheviks from ever taking power, and we saw that with the Archangel expedition in Murmansk. But this is going to be Western Europe is going to be very terrified of this, big time. This is a big event for them. Okay, one of the important figures in the early Russian Soviet government was Trotsky, and if you remember Animal Farm, this is Snowball. And he is going to organize the Red Army. We're going to see the Russian army transform into the famed Red Army to suppress any opposition to Bolshevik power. And we're going to see they're going to go after the former, the group of the whites that they fought for power in the Russian Civil War. But he's going to go after anybody who threatens Bolshevik power in the Soviet Union, and they are going to use the Cheka, their secret police, to enforce, to help enforce their rule, and that's really going to be a staple of some of these authoritarian regimes that we're going to see. We're going to see Italy, Mussolini have his own secret police. We're going to see Hitler with his Gestapo, his SS, have their own secret police. This is going to be, we saw that with Napoleon, one of our first modern dictators, have his own secret police, right? This is just a commonality of these dictatorships, having this secret police to help enforce their rule. All right. So Lenin, he's going to be the leader of the revolution. He's going to be the leader of this Bolshevik party, and he is going to be the presumed leader of the new proletariat. But we're not going to see everything work out the way Lenin wants, and we're going to see some really interesting developments in Lenin's early tenure. Remember, Lenin is analogous to metaphorically Old Major in Animal Farm. Okay. We're going to see the nation run by Lenin from the top undemocratically. And remember, Karl Marx in the Communist Manifesto, 1848, remember that text? He predicted there would be a dictator, right? But then he predicted that the dictator would relinquish power and give it to the proletariat. This is not necessarily what's going to happen. So there's a big fatal flaw within that. But Lenin right now in the early stages of the Soviet Union is running the country undemocratically from the top, okay? And their economic policy was war communism. And this was pretty much pure communism. The government is going to try to run everything, right? That we know that about communism is when the government takes over everything, controls everything, all means of production. Not major means is more socialism. We're going to see Lenin right here with their policy called war communism. Let's make sure we highlight that early on in Lenin's tenure. They're going to run everything, but there's going to be a big change with Lenin, which we'll talk about. All right. And one of the reasons why he had this policy of war communism, well, he wanted to fight this civil war. And he needed all the money, all the industry, all the railways to transport soldiers, troops. He needed to control everything in order to win this civil war against the whites. And war communism was not necessarily a good thing for them. A lot of opposition was generated from war communism. It helped the Bolsheviks consolidate and hold power, but peasants are going to be really happy with this. Lenin, is going to take their food away from them to feed his soldiers, and they're going to be like, dude, you just gave us land, you just gave us all this stuff. Now you're taking away our grain. What's up with that? And so war communism is going to be something that did generate some opposition, but we're going to see Lenin try to be cool with the peasants. And we're going to see Lenin, after the Civil War ends, after he kind of gets what he needs, we're going to see him change his tune. There were major strikes against war communism in the early 1920s. You saw part of the Navy mutinied in that. The early tenure, ladies and gentlemen, because of war communism, for Lenin and the Soviet Union was very unstable, very tenuous. It was tough. It was a very tough time for the early Soviet Union. But we're gonna see Lenin change, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. But here's the big irony. Okay, is you see Lenin and the proletariats, they had established a dictatorship over themselves, right? And so the big irony here that we're going to be seeing is that there is going to be no classless society. There is going to be no relinquishing of power. There is going to be no, equality for all. We are really going to see that Karl Marx's idea of a dictator relinquishing power, that's just never gonna that's never going to really happen, and that's one of the fatal flaws of communism and one of the fatal flaws of why it's going to fail. Okay, all right, get out a highlighter, please, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to highlight this term, the new economic plan, and this is a trap question on the AP exam, a big trap, okay, because we are going to see Lenin institute some capitalism. This is going to be in his new economic plan. We are going to see Lenin realize that pure communism is not necessarily going to work out for him. So he's going to tolerate private industry in some specific capacity, okay? Private industry would be tolerated except in, so banking, no private industry. It's not going to be tolerated in heavy industry, transportation, commerce, but private industry, private business, private corporations, some capitalism will be tolerated, specifically in farming. They're going to let the peasants make money for themselves. Why do you think Lenin's doing that? Well, he needs them. Remember, he needed those old serfs. He needs the peasants on his side. It's a way he won the revolution, a way he won the Civil War. He needs, and also, remember, he stepped on them in the Civil War with war communism, took their grain. He needs to make sure that they're happy, they're good. All right, and that's going to be a big, 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 big deal, is that he is going to allow private industry in multiple industries, but definitely in agriculture, and that's going to be huge. It's going to allow the peasants to be able to make money for themselves. He's going to help stabilize the countryside, okay? They're not going to be able to avert famine, okay? Because the peasants have lost so much of their grain from the Civil War. There's going to be low food supplies, but that's still a big step. And it's going to give the peasants a lot of trust within the communists. So a trick, this is his new economic plan, ladies and gentlemen, is kind of a trap question right here. The AP test could be like, asking you about that, and they're going to test you on that. It's important to understand that this is a little bit of communism, but some capitalism as well. Okay, so very important for us. Okay, all right. And so early on in the 1920s, the Soviet Union had small farming. You have some private business, and you have some communism. You have some socialism. You have some of the major means of production being owned by the government. So the question is right here: is our early Soviet Union purely communist? The answer is no. They're more socialist. You see some private business, but you see some of the major means of production being controlled by the government. So it's a healthy mixture. All right. And so that's a little bit of a trap question. Okay. And there is Lenin. All right, looking all glorious. All right, women workers, and we're going to see this be a big part of the early communist rule, ladies and gentlemen, is the industrialization of the Soviet Union. We are really going to see the Soviet Union flex its economic muscles and finally really kind of catch up on a modern sense to the rest of the world economically during these interwar years. Okay. During this time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to see the Third International. Now, I believe I talked about the First International, may have not talked about the Second International. The First International, if you remember, is where I believe communism, Marxism becomes the most popular form of socialism. This Third International, ladies and gentlemen, was another really important meeting for communists and socialists. And the Bolsheviks intended at this meeting to establish themselves as the leaders of Marxism and for the kind of the model. Now, the Bolsheviks during this time are going to kind of they're gonna create this own group called the Comintern. Okay, and this Comintern is going to be the style of communism. It's me a group, and you're going to see other socialist groups join the Comintern. But this Comintern is going to be the style of communism that the Bolsheviks are going to kind of be outlining for people to adopt. And it was designed by Lenin to promote the Bolshevik style of socialism. So they're really out there showing how they're doing their own style of communism, their own style of socialism, and they're promoting it. And they're saying, hey, you want to be a successful communist country like us? You want to be successful like the Soviet Union? Join the Comintern and model your socialism after the Bolsheviks, after us. And that's kind of what Lenin was saying. All right, and so that's what he's doing. All right, he's making the Comintern, making the Bolsheviks the model for socialism in Europe. And he made the specific conditions to for any socialist party that wanted to join. And here are some of these conditions. It's not too important, acknowledge Moscow's leadership. Don't be a reformist, okay? Don't follow any other socialist leaders, okay? So he's. It's not like you need to memorize all that. What you should know is that the Bolsheviks are trying to make their style of communism the model, popular. They want everyone to follow their model. Because remember, there's many different types of socialism. There's different types now of communism, right? You're seeing Lenin promote this style of communism that is a little bit more conservative. It's not as radical as pure Marxist communism. So you're seeing right here the Bolsheviks really trying to get all the rest of the socialists to follow their style of socialism and their style of communism. All right, and what they wanted to do was destroy democratic socialism. Okay, remember democratic socialism. That's kind of like what Bernie Sanders is, right? They believe in democracy, but they believe in socialism. Lenin does not believe in democracy, right? He's a dictator. The Bolsheviks do not believe in democracy; they believe in a dictatorship. So we're seeing them try to destroy any form of democratic socialism. And what's important about this Comintern is a lot of European socialist groups are going to be very split on whether to join, and you're going to see that this Comintern is going to incite a lot of fear within Western Europe, and that's going to help facilitate our rise of the extreme right, our extreme conservatives, the fascists. You're going to see many conservative groups get pushed to the right, get pushed to more extremism because they're fearing other socialist groups. They're fearing that some of the liberals can become radicalized and join the Comintern. So this is going to be really really important, and I make that note right here. Right, communists are far left, so we're going to see the rise of far right groups such as the Nazis and the fascists that will use the fear of the far left to grab power. Right, so you're seeing Nazis and fascists on the far right, the our right, and then you see communists on the far left, and you're seeing Nazis and fascists use the fear of these radical liberals to get people to join them on the far right. And so that's really important, is you're going to see this third international spark fear. And we know that the Western countries in Europe, France, Britain, United States are already really scared, and Germany, and are really scared of the Soviet Union. Okay, we're going to end here because I'm going to do a completely different lecture on Stalin and Trotsky, aka an Animal Farm, Napoleon, and Snowball. We'll stop here and I'll put up another lecture. Thank you.